Welcome to this sculpting demo. In this video I'm going to be sculpting a hand study, which are always really fun. I always find those really enjoyable. As far as supplies, I'm going to be using some aluminum wire to build an armature for the hand, a really simple armature, and then I've just got some pliers with wire cutters. As far as clay, I'll be using Chevron Medium NSP. I also have a little bit of hard clay mixed in, so this is a pretty firm clay. And in the other room, I'm actually warming some of the clay up just with a space heater. And then I warm it up a little bit just so it gets a little bit softer at the beginning. And then I like it a little bit firmer as I work in the details. I probably won't take this to a really fine finish, and I probably actually won't use any tools for this sculpture. I'll just be sculpting the clay by hand. I'm probably gonna go like half life size or a little bit smaller. So to do that, I'm just gonna take 5 sections of wire that are about the same size. Let's do about that long. 10 inches or about 26 centimeters. And I'm just gonna repeat this length a couple times. This is the armature, these are gonna be the fingers. And then to build this, I'm just gonna take 2 pieces of the wire and twist those together pretty tightly. Just like that. Do the same thing with another 2. 4 pieces of wire, and each 2 are twisted together. And then I'm gonna take this last one and then just make a little bit of a loop that kind of misses itself, so it kind of spirals down. Put that around the mid area of these 2, and I'll pinch that tight and wrap this wire back around these. Okay, and there we have it. So here we have the wrist is right here, and then we have the thumb and the forefingers. Oh, this is a little bit big, like life size. So these are almost life size, so I'm just gonna take this and just fold these over on themselves. Armature that's closer to the size that I'm going for. And I could just cut these off, but I think I'll just leave them. I'll just pinch the tip of the finger and then just kind of twist it around a little bit. And that just gives the clay something to grab onto. And if I want, I can use what I call the sculptor's cheat sheet, and you just close one eye and then hold it directly up to your reference, in this case my hand, and here I'm showing you on the camera. So I'm just gonna hold that up directly to the reference to check the measurements of all of the fingers and the thumb. So that looks about right. Let's go ahead and decide on the pose that we want for the hand. Let's do like that, yeah. That's something that's kind of interesting. So we got the thumb, and then halfway down the thumb is that first knuckle of the thumb. It's kind of bending up and forward. Then the next knuckle, a little bit more towards the end of the thumb. And the fingers are kind of bent out this way. That first finger is going to be bent back, way back, and then it halfway from the wrist to the tip of the finger, usually about halfway between those 2 is where the knuckle is. So right here, the wrist to that first knuckle is about the length of the finger, and then if you cut that in half, that's about where the second knuckle is. From here to here, about the same as from here to here, and then half of this is where that one is, and then half of that is that last one. So I'm just kind of going by halves. Say, okay, half of that, and then half of that last one. Same thing with the middle finger, bent in a similar way, coming with the halves right there. And then bend at that mid knuckle. And then the pinky, that one is bending this way. Something like that. And so that is the basic gesture that we're going for. And then I'll decide, how do I want the wrist? Do I want it to be coming back like this? Or do I want it to be bending forward? Yeah, let's do bending back. Bending back at about that angle. And we just take these and bend them all back like that. Okay, so there we have pretty much the gesture of the armature. Kind of looks a mess right now, but hopefully we'll be able to clarify some things as we start to add some of these details. Just gonna kind of correct some of this gesture, make sure that there's enough space between this pointer finger and the thumb right there. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so now let me go get some warm clay and we'll start adding clay to this armature. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just kind of focus on getting some clay over the wire armature and try to think of things as pretty blocky. So I want kind of a blocky form for the wrist, just kind of making this boxy shape for the wrist. And there's also, I'm imagining this, the palm of the hand here. Palm of the hand here is kind of a box right here. And then that box is kind of curved. So it kind of curves around because that pinky's bending forward. So it's a curved box. You can see that curve of it right there. So I'm gonna come in and add in some clay to represent that curved box. So you can see that's already starting to look more coherent as a hand. And something to keep in mind when you're sculpting the hands is the webbing. This webbing between the fingers, it's at an angle. So that webbing angles forward, and so there's kind of this slope towards that webbing. So on the front side, it looks like the fingers are shorter, and then on the back, it looks like those fingers are longer, because that webbing actually comes up about halfway between that first and second knuckle right there. Halfway between those is where that webbing is. Then you also want to make sure that there's enough space in between the fingers. You can see how spaced out these fingers are. A common beginner mistake is to make those fingers look like they're all coming from too close in and then just kind of sprawled out. But there's actually quite a bit of thickness in these knuckles, and so the center line of the fingers are actually quite a bit spread out, especially as that hand spreads out. I'm gonna give a little bit of an indication of what's going on with the thumb. I'm really just thinking about this triangle shape inside here, and then this big thenar eminence, this big muscle of the thumb. And then the thumb turns in, so as it closes, as it clamps, it kind of clamps in towards the pinky finger, whereas when it's out, you know, it's at a little bit of an angle, but then as it closes in, it really faces towards that pinky finger. You can see right there, you know, as the thumb is out, it's pointing at a different direction than all the other fingers. So pay attention to where the thumbnail is, and then where that front part of the thumb is, and how that changes depending on how far the thumb is bending forward. So this one, it's pretty much facing, you know, facing these two fingers right here. Add a little bit of clay onto the fingers themselves, just to give myself something to build the anatomy of the fingers off of, and to also just see if it looks right as far as proportions and things like that. Sometimes it's hard to tell when you have fingers that are so thin if things are looking right. You can see that pinky is too rounded. It just looks like a noodle. At this point, I'll clarify those knuckles and things as I start to add in the anatomy, so I don't have to worry about it too much. It does help to keep in mind where those joints are, but I'll solidify those in a little bit. Just a thin layer of clay on all of those fingers. Okay, now I'm gonna start to come in and just add some thickness where I feel like it needs to be more thick. So this palm part of the hand definitely needs some thickness, and this muscle right here of the pinky finger, and then that the wrist itself is quite a bit thicker. Same thing on that thumb side. Now I'm going to come in and just start to lay in some of the anatomy and forms. So I'm just looking at the muscles and bones and pads, and then coming in with little pieces of clay and adding those in. Start to thicken up the fingers themselves and establish the joints. And to do that, I'm just going to lay in a piece of clay and then just kind of pull away from the joint to get something that's a little bit more indicative of what's happening there. Thickness from both sides. When this finger is pulled back, that knuckle of that first finger pushes forward. There you can kind of see in the mirror. So I'm coming at this pointer finger, that's the one I'm focusing on first, just coming at it from different angles. Really just focusing on the side view from this side and then the front view from this way. I want to make sure that I get that thickness in place. You can see as I start to thicken that up, the distance between these fingers, which before felt so far, it's quickly closing that gap. Let's do the same thing with the middle finger. Add in some thickness from side to side for those fingers to be a little bit thicker. I'm going to move this knuckle back a little bit. There's a little bit of roundness on this back of the finger. I'm going to try to capture that. And I feel like this back of the hand, like this right here, looks too long compared to over here. I feel like that's because the back of the hand kind of tilts up a little bit. And there's that bump, so I can come in and just add some mass right there. And there's the bony bump of the ulna right there. And if I feel like this palm needs to be more bent, I can kind of press in and bend that palm a little bit more so that it's really curving around. You can see right there how curved that is. I may need to make some adjustments, which is fine. It's kind of like a creepy Halloween hand pose. You can see as I'm thickening up these fingers, I'm trying to start to lay in an indication of where those plane changes are, where the knuckles are. Big knuckles on the thumb. That muscle, the thenar eminence, comes down a little bit farther, starts here and then wraps around. Looking a little bit better with the thumb. Let's see. With the hand kind of squishing together, it does come right to that muscle of the pinky over here on this side. I'm gonna look at this over here to see it a little bit clearer. That mirror comes in really handy. I'm just looking at that inside and especially the shape of the palm. It needs to be wider. Bows outward on both of these sides. So I'm looking at right here, the shape of the hand right here. Not the whole hand, just the palm of the hand. And this is actually kind of squeezing. The way this squeezes is pulling that muscle in and forward, so I can actually see the transition between this when the pinky pulls inward. Right there, that little pinch. Or this fat pad here is kind of pulled down and then twists around that pinky. Show that wrapping around. Now I'm just continuing to go in and work on the palm of the hand first. I feel like this is the kind of the foundation. To play around a little bit and not get too serious about the details and stuff. Just try to get the proportions and the shapes going in a way that's interesting. So let's go ahead and put in some of these fat pads on the inside, and they kind of bend in a weird way. So it kind of is thin towards this part and then thickens. And on the tip of the finger, there's a little bump, and then there's another bump. So really just focusing on it from that side view mostly. That shape more accurate. Let's come in and just want to get this a little bit more realistic. Forearm is coming off the hand. Same thing on this side. Get a little bit more thickness over here. That forearm. Something like that. Pretty exaggerated. The other one's not as much. Okay, I think I'm gonna leave it there for now. This is about 1 hour into this creepy severed hand sculpture study. If you'd like to learn sculpting, be sure to check out my Patreon page or my Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course over at Proco.com, as well as my Portrait Sculpting course. Both of those you can find at Proco.com. I walk you through everything that I wish I knew when I started sculpting the figure. Really fun study maybe for Halloween.